Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We appear to be live. Hope you're well. Welcome back to another PMQ's live stream on my left eye. I'm your host, Lefty. You're all very welcome here this evening. If you're a returning viewer, welcome back. If this is your first time on a stream of ours, please do subscribe and hit the thumbs up button to help us out with the algorithm and help us reach a wider audience. I'm going to get started very shortly. Let's just dip into the lounge. Alright, so this is the second week since PMQs has returned. We're going to see what's been happening in the House of Commons this week. No doubt. Some quips are going to be involved in the exchanges between Keith here and Sunak, as usual. We'll be diving straight in shortly. I've just got one or two clips. Actually, it's just the one before we go into it. JC, welcome. And SJD, all the initials going on in the chat so far this evening. Very welcome to both of you. Hope you're well tonight. So yeah, I've not seen any of PMQs. I've not even seen any clips. I've had quite a busy day, to be honest. So yeah, this is going to be my first reaction to what goes on. I think again the highlight's probably going to be someone like Stephen Flynn, as usual. At least you get to look forward to him. But we've got a bit of an update for you as well, which I'm going to come on to in just a second. Welcome back, Mithril. Great to see you again. And yeah, JC and Mithril both showing off the Corbyn emoticons on the name there. Thanks a lot for your sustained support. For anyone who's listening for the first time, if you'd like to help contribute towards the channel, we'd love you to join us. A couple of packages there from just 99p, lots of perks, please do check those out. Super thanks are also available on the video for anybody watching back on a replay. You can also use the Buy Me a Coffee page, follow the links in the description. Well, one thing I think is going to be coming up probably quite a few times, which is why we've updated the Stop the Boats game. Modified it slightly, which I'll tell you about in just a moment. But I'm guessing the Rwanda thing's going to come up quite a lot. The House of Lords passed it after a lot of back and forth between the Commons and the Lords. This is Sunak's latest piece of immigration legislation. Complete waste of taxpayers' money, just trying to buy a few xenophobic right-wing votes. So that's definitely going to come up. We'll see what else does as well. There's always going to be local issues, of course, people mentioning things in constituency, but also some of the broader things that have happened recently. And the crazy thing was, last week we actually didn't even get a score on the Stop the Boats game, unbelievably. Sunak didn't mention the phrase once or similar phrases pertaining to it. And then just the other day, actually I think I might have a picture. Just bear with me. One moment, Keith. I'm going to pause Keith for a second. Yeah, just bear with. So the other day, after a 0 on Stop the Boats, just get the logo back up. So he then does, he then gives a public statement with Stop the Boats written right on the front there, as you can see, and said it umpteen times. I've not seen his whole speech, but yeah, the irony. It's almost like he's trying to catch us out. So quite interesting. Maybe he's been watching the stream. Who knows? But speaking of speeches, just before we go on to the PMQs itself, there's another interesting speech I want you to see. Not sure who this member of Parliament is, but he certainly seems a right bastard.
Well, make no mistake, my friends. The time has come. Oh, yes. Everyone in this hall knows in their hearts that England is simply the greatest country in the world. So why should the nation that produced Shakespeare, Dickens, Christopher Wren, Florence Nightingale, and those are just the people on our banknotes, for Christ's sake, kowtow to the continent that produced Hitler, Napoleon, the Mafia, and the Smurfs? My friends, I have toiled in the bowels of Europe, and I know what shit passes through shit. And I won't say, oh, pardon my French, because I think it's about time we had some bloody good old-fashioned Anglo-Saxon. Before me, I see thousands of brave Britons, whereas behind me cower the ranks of the gutless, the spineless, and the brainless. So are we, the victors of El Alamein, going to allow these faceless people to sell us into your oblivion? Or are we going to stand up in this great British party and demand our country back? If that is the will of the conference, and a man is needed to save Britain, then I am humbly prepared to put myself forward. For I love my country, and I wish to serve her.
So that's Alan Bastard, former Member of Parliament for Holtham Price, was it? Played by the late great Rick Mail, of course. Yeah, you're right, SJD. Rick Mail was both satirical and prophetic. Yeah, great loss. Mithril, have I seen? That seems to have gone back on her own report. No, I hadn't actually. I've not actually. I will check that out. Thanks a lot for pointing that out to me. And yeah, the bullseye with the whole Rwanda thing. It's only 300 people max can be deported. 1.8 million per person. Wow. Incredible. Right, let's get into it. Just a quick mention, of course, you're probably already aware. It's not actually Sunak. It's going to be Deputy Oliver Dowden. So I've still got the Sunak logo up. Don't have time to make a new thumbnail. I'll quickly explain. The amendments to the game were still taking count of how many times Rishi Sunak says stop the boats, or Dowden in this case. Excuse me. Probably just handed his scripts over to Dowden, so it's still very likely that it will be mentioned. but also on the other team, as it were, we've got Keith's I'm a lawyer counter. How many times is he going to mention that he's a lawyer or was former director of public prosecutions, things like that. So we'll be keeping count of both, and we'll see who wins each week. So, yeah. Let's get the counters up. So we're going to have Stop the Boats and Keith's I'm a Lawyer. So it's 0-0 currently. And we're about to kick off. Let's go. Let's go. Strap yourselves in, folks.
Number one, Mr. Speaker.
Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I have been asked to reply. I know that members across the House will wish to join me in offering condolences to the family and friends of Lord Frank Field. He was an outstanding parliamentarian who worked tirelessly to make society a better place. My right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, is in Berlin. He has announced the biggest strengthening of our defence in a generation. Mr. Speaker,
I suppose he took a helicopter to Berlin, did he? Or private jet?
in wishing the Jewish community a happy Passover, a celebration of freedom. But of course, we remember the empty chairs of those hostages still being held captive in Gaza and call for their immediate release. Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Jonathan Gullis.
Mr. Speaker, I too would like to pass on my thoughts and prayers to Lord Field's family, friends and colleagues, and particularly the students and teachers
Oh God, it's
at the
Goulis.
Academy in Stoke-on-Trent who are part of the Frank Field Education Trust. Mr. Speaker, since being elected in 2019, I've helped reopen Tunstall Town Hall with a new library and family hub, secured funding for additional CCTV, a new...
Come on, libraries, everything. The Tories have stripped everything away in the last 14, going on 15 years. Give over, Goulis.
...gates and better lighting in Tunstall to make sure our streets are safe. Breathing new life as well into Tunstall's old library and bars thanks to this government's levelling up fund of 56 million to Stoke-on-Trent. But sadly, Labour-led Stoke-on-Trent City Council seek to undermine this progress by introducing a brand new garden tax on residents to have their garden waste collected.
Oh, blame the councils again. There we go.
Landlords who plague Tunstall High Street and are increasing crime and antisocial behaviour.
Take funding away from areas that aren't going to vote for Tory all the time and then blame Labour.
Prime Minister agree with me that Stoke-on-Trent Labour...
Order. It's normally Mr. Gullis who's loud, so please, let me hear it.
It just goes to show the disdain the Labour Party have for Stoke-on-Trent. So does the Deputy Prime Minister agree with me? It's time for Stoke-on-Trent Labour to axe the garden tax, to take the fight to lousy landlords...
It's only... Order.
There is a question to be asked, and there is a time in which we ask it. I suggest he puts in for an adjournment debate. I'm sure you've got the answer.
Well, Mr. Speaker, there's not much I can add to that. He has ever proved what an excellent campaigner he is for his constituents.
It's only the first question, and they're already going on like a group of school kids on the last day of term.
And of course, he highlights the same problems with Labour councils across the country, raising taxes and letting services fall into disrepair. And of course, he's totally right to be holding rogue landlords to account.
Right, we now come to the Deputy Leader of the Opposition.
Oh, and it's Rayner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay.
And can I first of all share with the Deputy Prime Minister's comments regarding
Well,
our
it
Jewish
still
community
keeps
and a happy
thumbnail.
Passover, and also start by acknowledging the loss of David Marquand and Baroness Massey, both of whom made historic contributions in this Parliament, politics and wider life. And also send my condolences following today's news to the family of Lord Frankfield, who is a good friend of mine and a colleague, and who was a tireless campaigner against poverty and a champion for his constituents. Yeah. Mr. Speaker, I know the party opposite is desperate to talk about my living arrangements, but the public want to know what this government is going to do about theirs. Yeah. Natalie from Brighton has been served with 2 no-fault eviction notices in 18 months. She joins nearly 1 million families at risk of homelessness due to his party's failure to ban this cruel practice. Now, instead of obsessing over my house, when will he get a grip and show the same obsession with ending no-fault evictions?
Well, to begin with, it is a pleasure to have another exchange with the Right Honourable Lady in this House, our 5th in 12 months. Any more of these, and she'll be claiming it as her principal residence. On the issue of no-fault evictions, it may have escaped the Right Honourable Lady's attention, but we will be voting on exactly that matter later today. The Conservative government taking action.
Mr. Speaker, he clearly thought he could spend all week obsessing over my living arrangements. I didn't even bother to read up on his own government's bill this afternoon. The reality is, he caved in to vested interests on his backbenchers and delayed justice for people like Natalie. Yes. This week, the Housing Minister said there is no...
Rachel Reeves hasn't blinked once yet, as far as I've seen. And she's staring into the back of Rayner's head as though there's a TV screen strapped to it or something. It's just a bit odd, don't you think?
No solid date for banning no-fault evictions. The Housing Secretary now says it won't happen before an election. So if he can give us a date, can he name it now?
I can name the date for the Right Honourable Lady. Today. It's today that this House will be voting on it, and I'm confident that in line with our manifesto, we will deliver on that commitment.
Councillor Rayner.
Mr. Speaker, he clearly hasn't been looking up on his own government bills. But let me turn to another Tory housing failure. Leaseholds are a rip-off and a con. But the government's proposed ban on new leaseholds applies only to houses. The majority of leaseholds are in flats. What's the point on a ban on new leaseholds if it won't apply to flats?
Again, the Right Honourable Lady is talking about legislation introduced by this government, which the party opposite totally failed to...
Neither of them are going to build any social housing. They've both got the same policy on that front, and they're arguing over leaseholds. But there will still be landlordism under the Tories or Labour.
Homes in the last year and the last 12 years than Labour delivered when they were in office. But of course, all of this can only be paid for by making sure that we have a strong economy. And I'll tell you,
that is very rich coming from a Tory.
Her policy to repeal every single Conservative trade union law in the first 100 days would open the door to French-style wildcat strikes, sweeping away the reforms that made this country great.
Well, it's people's legitimate right to strike. Don't be ridiculous, Dowden.
Not abolish, from Margaret Thatcher, the right to buy your council house.
Councillor Rayner.
Mr. Speaker, I was expecting a little bit better from him today. He seems to be a bit worn out. Maybe it's the 3 a.m. calls from the bad men that have been keeping him up at night. But he also, Mr. Speaker, he also talks about...
To a credit, her delivery is a lot better than Starmer's. Might be slightly biased, being from the northwest, but it's definitely more interesting than listening to Keith's drone.
About affordable homes, families are trapped in temporary accommodation and stuck on waiting lists. And in the West Midlands, his mayor has used his multi-million-pound housing budget to build just 46 social homes in 8 years. That's almost as many as the Chancellor's property portfolio. But the British people know that his party won't build the homes that this country needs. So when are they going to get a chance to vote for a government that will?
Well, I'm surprised the Right Honourable Lady raises the West Midlands.
Well, I don't think they will. They've said they'll build new homes, but not social housing.
The council are hiking up council tax by 21%, whilst in the meantime, and I'm sure this would please her, continuing to hand out 1.8 million to the
They keep going on about councils almost... Goodness, it's almost as if there's a local election coming up or something. And in areas that aren't likely to vote for them, they've cut funding the most. And now they're trying to blame opposition parties for that. Pretty obvious and despicable tactic, really.
Trade unions. By contrast, Andy Street, our brilliant mayor of the wider West Midlands, has delivered 6.1 billion of investment to improve transport. So there you have it, the contrast between the Conservative Party and the Labour Party. The usual political opportunism from her, failing to ask about the issues that really matter. If you want more bins, if you want more bin collections, more potholes filled, lower debt and lower council tax.
Hang on a minute. Just was it last year, towards the end of last year, Sunak was bragging about how there'll be less bin collections in terms of having to have all separate bins for things, which didn't actually exist. He pretended that that was a thing and then he was going to get rid of it. Do you remember that? And now they're bragging about more bin collections. So they need to make their mind up which way they're going on that one. Is it more frequent? Are they trying to say more frequent collection for less bins? Is that how they're going to spin it? But either way, God, make your minds up.
Vote Conservative, because whether it's Ben Houchin in the Tees Valley or whether it's Andy Street in the West Midlands, it's only the Conservative mayors who deliver more for less.
Well, Mr. Speaker, that's pretty revealing that he thinks that housing isn't an issue for the British people, because I think it really is. And people in glass houses shouldn't throw the stones, because in Birmingham and across the whole of this country, councils are facing black holes because of his government's austerity programme. And I would also warn the Deputy Prime Minister that Tory councils have also faced 114 notices, and Birmingham Council has had over £1 billion.
Well, yeah, Birmingham is one of the biggest cities in the UK, of course. And for it to go bankrupt is just testament to how the Tories have handled the economy on a national and a local level over the last decade and a half. So as little admiration as I have for the Labour Party at the moment, that point does remain true. Of all the people who've sided with Starmer ever since he took over as leader of the Labour Party, I think Angela Rayner was quite a disappointment for me. I'd expect it from the likes of Rachel Reeves, for example, perhaps even David Lammy, and other careerists, Lisa Nandy et al. But she does genuinely come from a working class background, Angela. Rayner, of course, unlike so many other members of Parliament in both the Tories and Labour. So I don't know how genuine I can really sincerely take anything that she says anymore, just because she's, you know, Starmer calls the shots, of course. There's so little democracy in the Labour Party right now. But I'm not sure if she means the things that she's going to promise. But all we've seen with Labour so far is them going back on the word, as disappointing as the Tories.
£1 taken from their budget from some of the poorest people. More than 16,000 families face losing their homes after the party's mini-budget, Mr Speaker, and mortgage bills continue to soar. Meanwhile, the former Prime Minister parades around the world in a twisted victory lap promoting a new book, saying that the mini-budget was her proudest moment. So since she won't apologise to those families losing their home, will he?
Did see Liz Truss trying to flog a new book. It was hilarious. She was holding it back to front and upside down at one point to the camera. Things like that. Yeah, what a crazy 40 days they were.
Down to 3%, and as a result of that, in an increasingly dangerous world, the Prime Minister was able to announce his plan for the biggest strengthening of defence spending in a generation. But it should come as no surprise that the party opposite refuse to say whether they back it or not, because this comes from the Right Honourable Lady who voted to scrap Trident and install in Downing Street someone who wanted to change the army into a Peace Corps. There you have it.
Oh, give over, Dowden. This carry on again. And the worst thing about it being that because of Starmer's position, they're not going to come back and correct him. And if you repeat a lie often enough, they're hoping that it will magically turn into the truth with their truth alchemists who turn dog crap into gold. Or at least that's the way that both Starmer and Sunak see it. That's for sure, yeah. They just can't help themselves but bring up those awful, awful lies. And that about the army, that Corbyn was going to abolish the army, get rid of the army, or turn it into something completely unrecognisable, was just completely made up. But Labour and the Speaker, you know, was Lindsay Hoyle on this. But again, he has to side with Keith, being a member of the Labour Party himself. Let's crack on, anyway.
Mr Speaker, friends, we all want to see 2.5%. The difference is that we haven't cut the army to its smallest size since Napoleon. And Mr Speaker, never mind some secretive deep state. Never mind some secretive deep state. It's the state of the Tory party that's the problem. They're in a deep state of sewerage. After 14 years, they failed renters, they failed leaseholders.
Look behind you, Angela. Look behind you.
But, Mr Speaker, I read with interest that the Right Honourable Gentleman has been urging his neighbour in number 10 to call an election because he's worried they might get wiped out. Has he finally realised that when he stabbed Boris Johnson in the back to get his mate into number 10, he was ditching their biggest election?
Your silence on what he just said about Corbyn is doing exactly the same thing, Angela. Exactly the same thing. In criticising the opposite party's former leader, there's no difference in what you're accusing them of as what you just did in terms of staying silent when Dowden said a clear lie about Jeremy Corbyn. Rachel Reeves is still glued to that TV, stuck to the back of Angela Rayner. On we go.
Election winner for a pint
Oh,
size.
and it's still 0-0, even though neither Sunak or Starmer are appearing. I'm hoping that the respective deputies try and still the lines. We'll see how it goes. We're about 12
Loser.
minutes in.
Well, I think the whole House will have heard, despite all the bluster from the lady opposite, not a single word on whether she would actually back our plans to invest in our armed forces. No plans in a dangerous world. And of course,
Well, of course, no, allow me, Oliver. Despite all the public cuts, he's found billions behind the back of the couch again to be able to throw at the army. And this is perhaps making a few people feel a little bit anxious as we edge towards a wider escalation in the Middle East, the Ukraine-Russia conflict still ongoing, etc. So, all of a sudden, he can find 20-odd billion for the army when the NHS is on its knees. Right, what's this guy got to say?
Valley is absolutely on fire.
Oh, it's Craig
196.5
Whittaker.
million for hospital reconfiguration, 150 million for flood defences, no fewer than 11 schools being remodelled or rebuilt as we speak. 45 million for 3 town centre regeneration, and Elland is getting a new railway station as well. So does my right honourable friend agree with me that the naysayers around about levelling up need look no further than the Calder Valley to see what a great achievement this government is.
Levelling up's a complete and utter farce. It's a fallacy. It's a smokescreen. They give these ministerial positions in an attempt to make it look like they're doing something. Levelling up, that's a phrase that the Tories have invented. That's right-wing Tory syntax. It's part of the invented lexicon. The same as other appropriated things like, woke and cost of living crisis, which is just basically poverty, and the translation for levelling up should basically just be equality. No, that's not happening, Craig, because, again, the Tories and Labour refusing to nationalise the railway services, for example. He's bringing up the railway services in the example about what he's saying. And the privatisation is ripping off commuters, ripping off customers, going into private. The profits are just going into private hands, shareholders' hands. And there's no difference between business and politics, especially where the Tories are concerned. And they're happy to perpetuate that. So they can't attempt to gloat with these planted questions about opening or extending a railway here or two, lest I bring up HS2, which I won't. I'll just crack on, but you all know what a complete and utter shit show that was.
Deputy Prime Minister.
well, my honourable friend is absolutely right. It's not just the Colne Valley, but it's communities up and down the country. The government is investing billions in infrastructure across the United Kingdom, creating jobs and opportunities in every region. And I know that my honourable friend has been a staunch advocate for the Calder Valley, which is a fantastic example of that in action.
It's leader of the SNP, Murray Black.
Okay.
May I join in wishing the
This
Jewish
will be
community a happy Passover and also in sending my condolences to the families of family and
It's
loved
great
ones
to see you
of
back.
Frank
It's great to see you
Field.
back.
2 years ago, when mass graves were discovered in Ukraine, this House united in condemnation and rightly treated these graves as evidence of war crimes which Russia must be made to answer for. Yesterday, Palestinian officials uncovered 2 mass graves outside the bombed hospitals in Gaza. These graves also constitute as a war crime, don't they?
They do. That was a sickening story. that was
Well, of course, we would expect
that came out yesterday.
the democratic government of Israel to investigate any allegations of misconduct, and that's exactly what they do, and it's exactly what the Foreign Secretary and the Prime Minister urge.
This will be the usual turn. Investigations are ongoing. We're looking into this. Inquiries being made, etc. We are making sure that Israel and the United Kingdom are acting in full compliance with the law. That is basically the line. That is the line. Anytime anything comes up to do with Gaza, that is the only thing you're going to hear back from the Tories, from Sunak or his deputy, Oliver Dowden.
Urge them to do. But I find it quite extraordinary that she seeks to draw parallels between the legitimate war of self-defence of Israel and the conduct of Russia.
Very black.
Well, how many ways do you want to put that? Geographically, Russia are going into Ukraine territory. Israel, of course, have been going into and occupying Palestinian territory for decades now. Lest we talk about the shocking numbers of civilian deaths as well. But I'm sure Murray Black's got you see, the thing is with SNP especially, who are generally the highlight of PMQs these days, well, for me at least, and they will always directly respond to anything that's put back to them, whereas the Tories just have the preset lines, and now Labour are doing the same.
300 bodies, including the elderly and the injured, some of which had been stripped naked, mutilated, with their hands tied behind their backs. The UK's own arms policy states that if there is even a risk that war crimes may be taking place, then that is reason enough to halt the sale of arms. Given all we know, why then is the Prime Minister yet to do so?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, we continue to urge the Israeli government to investigate any allegations of misconduct. The difference, though, is that we can trust the Israeli...
What he means to say is that the Exchequer and his friends are making too much money to actually care about it. That is the real answer. That's the real truth, unfortunately. And, yeah, BAE culpable as well. Despite the fact that we, fortunately, at least we haven't had to directly defend our island against a foreign threat for a long time now, we are still armed to the teeth, and for a country our size, massive arms exporters as well. So that's the truth. That's the truth. But we are culpable. We are liable, as far as I'm concerned. It's been brought up before, only to be met by that same response, as I said before. And if we're found to be aiding and abetting war crimes, then that could, and probably should, have some serious legal ramifications for people who are involved in it.
Israeli government, a democratically elected government, to properly investigate those things. And of course, we keep the advice under review. The Foreign Secretary has recently made it clear that he has conducted a determination and has not changed his advice regarding export licences, and I think that is the correct decision.
Colin McCartney.
Speaker, the good people of Lincoln, who all declare their taxes and pay tax on their profit when selling their second homes, overwhelmingly want Lincoln Christmas Market to be brought back after the Labour-run City Council cruelly closed it last year. The Labour City Councils refused to do what the people of Lincoln want. What message will the Deputy Prime Minister send?
It's April. It's April. What's he on about?
The Prime Minister.
I'm afraid that what the honourable gentleman has decided...
Mithril, thanks a lot for the 5 gifted memberships. That's a great way to help spread the solidarity around. Cheers. So, Len Hewitt, Just a Person, Keith Hussain, and Linda Lee, U123. And Callan, please enjoy your perks. You can check out the static emojis available to you now. And also other perks, including members-only live streams. Welcome to the channel. Thanks again for that, Mithril. Thanks for your ongoing support. Great to see you back on the stream tonight. And a very warm welcome to everybody else as well.
Described is the Grinch in action. That Christmas market in the home of the Magna Carta was beloved.
Why that he just has to bring up the Magna Carta? Sorry. Why are they talking about this at this time of year?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of the Liberal Democrats, may I also offer our condolences to the friends and family of the late Lord Frankfield, and to wish a happy Passover to all those in the Jewish community. Mr. Speaker, unpaid carers have shared heartbreaking stories of how they have been hounded by the DWP and told to pay huge fines for minor infringements on carers' allowance earning rules, all because the government failed to do anything about a problem they have known about for years. Yesterday, Mr. Speaker, one of the Prime Minister's own dementia advisors...
Well, part of the Tories' remit is to literally go for disabled people, as well as those who help care for them. They've been very deeply affected by all the cuts.
...failed by his government and commit to a full review of the system.
Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, first of all, I pay tribute to all those unpaid carers. Indeed, I met some of them over the weekend. I know how hard they work and they keep our society
functioning. Then pay them properly. You're the one who decides how much they get paid.
Upgraded the benefits by £81.90 a week and increased the carers allowance by almost £1,500 since 2010. Now, in respect of allegations of overpayment, of course, appropriate discretion should be shown, but if it is the case that there have been erroneous overpayments, it's right on behalf of the taxpayer to be able to recuperate those. But of course, we'll work with anyone who's struggling with those repayments to negotiate sustainable and affordable repayment plans.
Virginia Crosby.
Mr. Speaker, my Ireland constituency of Unismorn is accessed via two bridges, the Menai Suspension Bridge and the Britannia Bridge. Holyhead is the second busiest...
Why don't you just take the helicopter, like Sunak? Just get a helicopter. Easy. What's wrong with you?
On behalf of my Unismorn constituents, will the Deputy Prime Minister use his influence to ensure that North Wales is not ignored by Cardiff and we get that third bridge?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Well...
Instead of spending a ludicrous amount of time and money building a bridge, which is, of course, something which takes a very long time, why not encourage more public transport use, for example, and try and solve it that way, rather than just extra bridges?
I know and understand the frustration across Wales, and particularly in the Honourable Lady's constituency, with this state of affairs. The Welsh Government have not prioritised building new roads. They're damaging growth potential in places like Anglesey. They're spending over £100 million on new politicians. And we will work with the Right Honourable Lady to make sure we resolve this.
Sarah Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Conservative...
Sorry, some of you might have been experiencing some buffering there. I've just had a warning up. And SJD, you say you've got connection issues as well. That might be at my end. Just bear with. I'm not sure why that's happening.
Candidate for London Mayor has promoted Islamophobic tropes online.
Shame on her.
Endorsed the beliefs of Enoch Powell. And claimed the black community has a problem with crimes. In the week that we marked the 31st anniversary of the murder of Stephen Lawrence, does the Deputy Prime Minister really endorse these views?
Of course he does.
Well, I think the Honourable Lady knows that she does not correctly represent the views of the candidate, and I find it extraordinary that she raises the issue of crime, because whilst Labour's London Mayor has increased the set by over 70%. Actually, recorded crime has increased 20% in London. That is the record of the Labour London Mayor, and no wonder people will be voting against him.
Cheryl Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I note that I'm the chair of the Fisheries APPG and thank the government for the recent pollock catch compensation. On the 12th of May, we will see the first ever National Fishing Remembrance Day. I'll be marking this occasion by laying a wreath at a service being held at Lew Quayside by the memorial plaque, which has the name of my late husband and unfortunately others on it. Will the Deputy Prime Minister, and will he ask the Prime Minister to mark this occasion by remembering those who have died, bringing this important food source to our table?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, I know how important this is to the Honourable Lady. And
Well, it wasn't, I mean, you know, condolences aside, the fact that she's lost her husband, wasn't this one of the staple benefits of leaving the European Union that we're expected to get? And alas, nothing's come of it.
I'm sure she will be remembering her late husband Neil on this day. It's important that we all recognise the sacrifices made by fishermen and women to bring food to our table, and I know that my colleague Minister Spencer will be visiting Grimsby on that day.
At Weston.
Mr. Speaker, in today's Northern Echo, Borough Chairman Steve Gibson describes the Mayor of Tees Valley as having given away the future of the region's children. He was referring to the 40% of Tees works with a forecast worth of £500 million gifted by Lord Houchin in a deal to 2 local business mates. Mr. Gibson,
£500 million?
the Local Development Corporation, describes it as unforgivable. Will the government finally admit Lord Houchin and the Conservatives have sold the Teesside taxpayers down the river?
He talks about Teesside taxpayers. Actually, Ben Houchin has never imposed a mayoral precinct in
Hate to break it to him, but they've let everybody down.
Teesside Airport and secured a new free port for Teesside. No wonder people will be voting for him again.
Sir Ian Duncan-Smith.
Mr. Speaker, can I ask my right honourable friend if he has seen the video that is doing the rounds of the theft in the shop in my constituency, Station Road, Boots the Chemist. In a space of 8 minutes, 2 threatening individuals robbed thousands of pounds out of that shop. And they're not alone. This is happening again and again and again. In fact, one of my team went out and photographed them leaving.
Well, there's 37 billion been stolen from COVID.
Secretary, through to the police. This is not a petty crime. This is a threat of violence and massive robbery. This should be a priority for the police. What we just talk about always is more police. Surely what we should be asking to be is more effective policing and get them off the streets.
Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, I think my right honourable friend is absolutely...
Just such an awful broad statement. Get them off the streets. Get this done. Get rid of this. Get rid of that, as though they can just snap the fingers and make things happen that way. But no. If you want to lower the crime rate, for example, is it probably a coincidence that poverty rates and crime rates go hand in hand, for example? But they don't think about that. It just goes straight into the authoritarian mindset and more heavy-handed policing as well.
Right to highlight this, and often it's the allegedly lower level crimes are the ones that cause the biggest impact on communities. And I know that my right honourable friend, the Home Secretary, has been very clear on that point, and I will make it to him again. Is also why we're rolling out a range of crime prevention measures through the Safer Streets Fund, improving CCTV and CCTV.
Don't say rolling out. I really don't like people saying rolling out. It's awful.
Again, to give greater powers to the police to deliver tougher sentences for more serious offenders.
Jeff Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Tough on this.
Earlier on in the
Tough on
session, the
that.
Deputy Prime Minister said that
Strong
when
and
the
stable.
Prime Minister and Chancellor took office, they restored stability to the UK economy. Who does he think caused the instability?
He just literally said stability straight after I said it.
Deputy Prime Minister.
I remember. They might want to forget it, but I remember the day the Conservatives came into office in 2010, and what was the note left on the desk of the Chief Secretary? There is no money left. That is the challenge that...
Yeah, because the housing market crashed, and who was it that massively deregulated the stock market? I wonder. Who could it be? Does anyone come to mind? Any guesses in the chat who that might be? Just take your time. Take your time. Honestly.
we have addressed through the Prime Minister and Chancellor successively.
Mr. Speaker, Labour's mayoral candidate in the West Midlands talks about housing but makes no commitment to protect our precious Greenbelt. He talks about transport, but he fails to commit to reopening Aldridge train station. And he committed to saving police stations such as Aldridge. Then when the Labour PCC said he would close them, he changed his mind and agreed to that. So we are left wondering, in my constituency, what does he stand for? So does my right honourable friend agree with me that only Mayor Andy...
Bit of an internal swipe going on here. Bit of a revelatory statement about the factions and the splits within the Tory party.
To highlight the record of Labour's Police and Crime Commissioner, and West Midlands Police have actually been put in special measures on Simon Foster's watch. And when it comes to the Green Belt, we've all seen the new wheeze from the Labour Party, redesignate Green Belt, Grey Belt and concrete all over it. Well, the Conservatives will not allow that to happen, and people up and down the country will vote Conservative to stop that happening.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Conservative ministers like to blame strikes and the pandemic for the appalling waiting times in the NHS. The Blackpool Teaching Hospitals Trust hasn't hit its target for seeing patients in A&E within 4 hours since 2015. Before the strikes, before the pandemic, but 5 years after the Conservatives came to office. So who does the Prime Minister, the Deputy Prime Minister, blame for that?
That's right. Just about the question I put to it was Thatcher.
Pandemic didn't happen, and they like that is the cause of the biggest pressure on the NHS, and they complain about NHS
because you cut it to shreds.
Backing strikes by doctors who unreasonably want a 35% pay rise, and despite all of those pressures,
no, they should have a 35% pay rise after what you put them through.
Mr. Speaker, the Labour leader of the almost bankrupt Hastings Borough Council and several other Labour councillors resigned from the Labour Party, citing that the National Labour Party has become overly authoritarian, a dereliction of local democracy, has lost its moral compass and is suffocating local voices because it's...
And this is what Keith has done to Labour. He's given the Tories a massive stick to beat him with, as well as betraying his own party. As she's saying, this is absolutely correct in what she's saying with the deselections that have happened, etc. They're not going to try and defend it. Obviously, this is a bit of a planted question in itself, but unfortunately, she's absolutely right. The member for Hastings and Rye, Sally Ann Hart, because there is no real democracy left within the Labour Party. And I know a lot of former members who've left for that very reason, for one sort of variation of it or another. Sad state of affairs.
Its only objective is power for power's sake. Would the Deputy Prime Minister agree that voting for Conservative candidates in upcoming elections will ensure local voices are heard and local democracy is upheld and better services are delivered.
Does the Deputy Prime Minister realise that there's a local election coming up, so we're going to keep saying local like it's an episode of League of Gentlemen or something? And also try and get some votes won a bit late in the day. It's 15 years we've been putting people through this crap, but if we throw a few crumbs on the table towards the end, when there's going to be a local and a general election in the same year, then they just might turn around and keep us in government with a majority. But obviously I don't think that's going to happen. We'll get into the ins and outs of predictions about the upcoming elections just now.
Deputy Prime Minister.
My honourable friend is absolutely right to highlight the really serious concerns about Labour councillors in Hastings. And this is what one former Labour councillor said. Labour are no longer providing the policies, support or focus on local government. I couldn't have put it better myself.
Mary Glendon.
Well, yeah, they're just going to agree with each other. Just going to pick out a couple of messages in the chat as well. Yeah, Mithril should turn all golf courses into social housing. I believe there's more land dedicated to golf courses in this country than there is social housing, which is quite unbelievable, really. And yeah, 14 years of continuous non-investment in frontline health services has caused issues. Odin Allfathers also just reminding us that there's no money left, no on the table is a standing tradition when they're handing over power of government to another party. Yeah, quite right, quite right.
Speaker, with thousands of steelworkers' jobs on the line, the likelihood of industrial action and reports of a deal for India to be exempt from carbon taxes, will this government now back this detailed, serious and robust multi-union proposal as the only way to keep primary steel making in the UK?
Yeah. The government will engage with any proposals that have been brought forward, as we always do, but it is actually the case that we've already provided over £700 million in energy cost relief to the steel sector in the past 10 years, and it's also the case that even the past year, the government spent £97 million more on UK-made steel for major public projects. So we're continuing to work with the steel industry, but we've already provided tremendous support.
John Barron.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I very much associate myself with the remarks of my right honourable friend regarding Lord Frank Field. He was a good man. I very much welcome the government's firm commitment to increase defence spending to 2.5% by 2030, something that will send the right message to our allies and potential adversaries alike. And it's something that the 1922 Defence Committee has been campaigning for a little while. Would my right honourable friend do what he can to ensure, though, that some of that increased money is spent on additional recruitment, including, if necessary, increasing wages sufficiently, to ensure that the Navy can man its ships, the Air Force can maintain its aircraft, and the Army can dominate ground?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, I know what a staunch advocate
can dominate ground. Whose ground? Where? All across the bloody world? Well, like in Gaza, you mean? Unbelievable. Yeah, Penny Mordaunt does look like she doesn't want to be there, Mithril. You're quite right. Maybe she's missing Rishi. Maybe she's a bit jealous, or she wanted to go to Berlin with him, but no. She's got to stay and sit in at PMQs with Oliver bloody Dowden instead of, best mate Rishi Sunak. She likes to see him stand up and fight, and she misses it. She misses his dulcet, Blur-esque tones. She only looks asleep there, just because I've paused it at that particular instance. But she can't wait to get out of there. She really can't.
My honourable friend is for the armed forces and for funding the armed forces. And I think it's something that all of us can take great pride in, that we are putting the resources in now to meet the challenges that the nation is likely to face over the next 5 years. We'll be working through the allocation of that, but it is already the case that in January we had the largest ever number of applications in recent years to join the armed forces. So we're making progress on that.
John Warrer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My constituent Lisa cares for her mother. She works part-time at WH Smith's and so was sure to keep the DWP informed so that she wouldn't be overpaid carers allowance. But because of a DWP blunder, she now faces a bill for £4,000.
Wow, shame.
The Secretary of State for Science cares for her career. She works part-time as a woke detector. But when she blundered, calling a top...
Is that a thing? Is that an actual... a woke detector? A woke detector? Oh, right. That'd lead me off onto a 15-minute rant. Just keep going.
Scientist, a Hamas supporter.
Can you imagine?
The bill, tens of thousands of pounds in costs and damages, was picked up by taxpayers.
Wow.
Like Lisa. Why?
The Prime Minister.
Well, it's this government has uprated benefits for carers, almost £1,500 more. Of course, I think it is the case that her constituents and my constituents, people up and down the country, would expect the government to seek to recover overpaid sums. But of course, we need to do that in a compassionate way, and if people are struggling to make repayment...
What about Michelle Mone? What about Michelle Mone?
I know that the DWP will engage to make sure that they have a sustainable and affordable way to make those repayments.
Robin Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I associate myself with the tributes and condolences paid to the late, great Frank Field? One of his lasting achievements in the world of education is the holiday activities and food fund, something that this government can take great pride in having funded. Can I urge my right honourable friend to use his good offices across government to make
Night, SJD. See you next time. Take care.
the continuance of that vital work?
The Prime Minister.
Yes, well, I know what an important piece of work this is, and his commitment to campaigning for it. We've already provided substantial sums for it, and I'm sure we will continue to do so.
Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the chair of the Scottish arm of Feeding Britain, can I thank you and the front benches for their tributes to the great Frank Field. He chaired an all-party parliamentary inquiry 10 years ago on food poverty, and food bank use has increased relentlessly since then. So can I ask the Government to consider, in Frank Field's memory, a cross-sector summit with the aim of helping communities to secure the resources to deliver food security programmes at the scale that is necessary?
Well, I join him in paying tribute to Lord Frank Field's campaigning. It is actually the case that over the past couple of years we've provided over £108 billion worth of support with the cost of living, including extra cost of living payments of £900 last year. The effect of all of that is actually there are 1.1 fewer people, 1.1 million fewer...
That's just the same as anything that the Tories say they're increasing to help benefit people. When you look at inflation, in real terms, it's actually not an increase, it's just another cut. And it's the same with doctors and nurses' pay, for example, and 100 other things.
Fewer people living in absolute poverty than when the Conservatives came to office.
Luke Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week we had the finance bill, and in it I noticed a reduction in the capital gains tax from 28% to 24% on residential properties to try and turbo boost the residential market. So will this apply retrospectively? So hypothetically, if you're a Labour frontbencher who could owe capital gains tax, will you benefit from this Conservative tax cut?
How many times have they brought up the Angela Rayner thing?
Taxes that everyone pays.
Final question, Kate Osborne.
Mr. Speaker,
This week marks the 5th Lesbian Visibility Week, founded by my good friend, publisher of Diva magazine, Linda Riley. This comes at a time when LGBTQIA women are being let down by this government, and nowhere more so than by their failure to remove the financial...
Well, you better ring the woke detector now, because obviously I'm sure that Kate Osborne's about to bring up a serious issue here, but while the Tories will try and pander to homophobes to gain a few more votes and have a very anti-progressive stance with this phony war on woke, the so-called war on woke, it'd be interesting to see Dowden's response, because should he be sympathetic to the point that Osborne's going to bring up, then would he not be going back on those so-called anti-woke sentiments? Of course, woke's just another word for progressive, but to say that you're anti-progressive is far too revelatory in showing how far right you are on the political spectrum, and they don't want to say that, so they try to replace it with this war on woke, so to speak, which they think is just about stopping various sub-cultures and people in the queer community as well, LGBTQ+, and people who change the pronouns especially. So let's see.
Financial burdens that same-sex couples face when accessing IVF. My constituents, Holly and Leanne, like so many others, have been priced out of having a family. So will the Deputy Prime Minister commit to finally ending this gay tax for same-sex couples who want to start a family?
Deputy Prime Minister.
I would dispute the Honourable Lady's characterisation of this government's record in this area. It was actually this government that introduced marriage for same-sex couples and passed the Turing Law. Now, she raises an important point, which I'm happy to take up with the Health Secretary, but the overall record of this government is an excellent one.
That completes Deputy Prime Minister.
Well then, well, that's the end of the session itself. Just very quickly on that final point. Without a Brexit to sell, of course, this is going to be one half of the Tories' next main strategy in the next election. Obviously, a strong anti-immigration sense. We ended up with, we've got a 0-0 again. But, yeah, just to say that most of what the Tories are going to be putting out before the next general election is going to be based on stop the boats, of course. That phrase is going to be getting thrown around quite a lot, although not so much in PMQs recently as we've seen for the second week running. That's never happened before. But both Sunak and Starmer should both be back. So let's see if they're going to be bringing those warm lines with them as well. The other half, of course, being this war on woke, because they have very little else to sell other than something inflation. And that is where things are going to get particularly messy, where they scrape the bottom of the barrel, knowing that they're very likely to be on the way out of the next general election. You're going to see them pandering to, you know, as far as right goes, pretty much, in trying to gain a few votes back. So that was an interesting session with the deputies representing the party leaders. Sunak off in Berlin. Penny Mordaunt, as we said, looking particularly jealous. I think Angela Rayner enjoyed filling in for Starmer. I mean, I wouldn't like to be sat there having to put up with Keir Starmer, whether it's in PMQs or during a speech or anything, to be honest. So I think she probably found it quite refreshing to get onto the podium, and there was a lot of back and forth between her and the Tories about this house sale of hers and whether she should have paid capital gains tax, etc., etc. But for several days now, or in fact it's been going on for weeks, the Tories have been trying to pry the police into investigating her, but can't say what exactly they should be investigating her for. I'm sure you saw that on the news rounds recently as well. So they just really painted themselves into a corner with it, and it's embarrassing. But I don't know why they tried to perpetuate that and keep that going in PMQs. Probably again, likely, with the fact that they don't have much to sell, as well as that there's an upcoming local election as well. Just a quick note on that. Also, going to try to do a live stream as we start to get the results from the local election and see which way that's likely to swing coming up in just a few weeks. So let's see what happens with that one. Well, at the moment, I'm getting the sense that this is just going off some of the recent by-elections, not all of them. There's been local ones as well as parliamentary ones, but I actually think, as happened in the first local election after Starmer took over, that the Greens are going to make the most significant gains. Lest we forget that Labour came 5th in that local election, which was what's the word I'm trying to look for? What's the adjective? It's very telling. It was very telling. We've seen in other by-elections that it's not been so much people are moving from the Tories to Labour. It's been very much the case that Labour voters have stayed at home. So I think at the moment that could happen in a few areas as well as the independents. I'm hoping to see socialist independents gain a few seats in the general election. You know, you've got to be realistic with things. So obviously there's not going to be a majority of independent candidates. You've got to have faith, you've got to have confidence and hope as well. But realistically, I'm just hoping to get a decent amount in, especially in a few key seats, including Keir Starmer's. Yeah, Andrew Feinstein will be putting up quite a campaign, similar to the one we saw in Rochdale with George Galloway recently. So that'll be one to keep an eye on later in the year. Let us know if you know how you're planning on voting in the next local elections coming up. It's up to you to keep that to yourself, but if you want to let us know if you've already made your minds up, then please do tell us. I'm strongly urging people to back either Socialist Independent or Grassroots Party, whichever options they have available to them. And as well, like I said, I think the Greens are going to make a few gains. Tory losses across the board, of course. It's just this... it's a case of the other parties stood underneath the Tories, waiting for the floor to collapse, and just who can gather up the most of their votes as possible. But it remains to be seen. So what did you think of that? What did you think of this session? I'm just going to take a look through a few comments. Yeah, Ordinal Father, just about when the Tories are trying to showboat about how much they're giving out to people, and that being completely done away with by inflation and other increasing costs as well. So you belong to a group and it was plastered all over the papers that you'd had a rise of several pounds. In fact, after adjustments, it was a 30p cut. Seen that in a lot of areas as well. Yeah, so also thanks a lot for keeping it cordial in the comments as well. Whether you've been responding to anything on the stream or just chatting amongst yourselves. I do my best to keep up with the chat, of course, at all times. I don't have any moderators at the moment, but I might be bringing some in soon. And yeah, I'd love to know your thoughts if you're watching on a playback, on a replay as well. So do add your comments there. Always great to hear people's opinions on the topics on the stream. Well, let's just dip back into the lounge. Oh, thank you, not at all, not at all. Also, another little reminder, if you've not watched the latest video on my left eye, that's available now. New videos dropped today. All about Gideon Falter and his, not altercation, that conversation with the member of the Met Police, as well as another incident at Columbia University in the United States of America. So please do check that out as well. We'll be back next week, of course, with another Wednesday PMQ session. Thanks a lot for joining us on this one. But before then, we'll be back on the regular Sunday live stream again, of course. Please do join us then. Should be back to the regular time of 7 PM. It was just scheduled for a bit later this week, and if you've not watched that, please do check out the replay also. And a final reminder, please do hit the subscribe and thumbs up buttons, etc. Also, if you'd like to help support the channel, you can use the super thanks or the don't buy me or the do buy me, buy me a coffee. It takes, you know, I need a lot of caffeine when I'm editing things together. So please do check out the buy me a coffee page. Links are in the description of this video, and also for the channel as well. All contributions greatly appreciated, of course, you lovely people. Yeah, maybe that's what the dog's for. He's there to round them up. Good point, Odin, Allfather. Yeah, and keep your eye out for exclusive members-only live streams as well. It's been great to see some of our members join us on the stream tonight. Thanks again to Mithril for those 5 gifted. Hope you 5 start to enjoy your perks. And hopefully we'll see you again next time, next week. We'll also have more content out between now and then as well, so keep your eye out for that. So until next time, everybody, have yourselves a lovely evening. I've been Lefty. It's been a pleasure to be here with you all. You've been wonderful this evening. And my left eye, we'll be seeing you soon. Take care, everyone.